U.S. to restrict Chinese media outlets deemed propaganda. The Trump administration on Monday added 4 Chinese media outlets to a list of organizations that should be considered foreign missions because of their ties to the government and the Communist Party, in a move that is likely to further aggravate relations between the two countries. State Department officials said the 4 organizations, including CCTV, would be required to submit a list of all their employees in the U.S. as well as any real estate holdings, just as they would if they were foreign embassies or consulates. None are being ordered to leave the U.S., and no limits on their activities were announced. But 5 other Chinese organizations were directed to cap the number of people who could work in the U.S. in March, a month after they were designated as foreign missions. State Department officials said the organizations are essentially mouthpieces for the Communist Party and Chinese government, not legitimate news outlets. The Communist Party does not just exercise operational control over these propaganda entities but has full editorial control over their content, said Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and Pacific Affairs David Stilwell. This foreign mission designation is an obvious step in increasing transparency of these and other PRC government propaganda activities in the United States. The other 3 added to the list of foreign missions are the China News Service, the People's Daily newspaper, and the Global Times. Its editor-in-chief Hu Zijin said the U.S. decision was absurd, describing the Global Times as market-oriented media. The tabloid is owned by the People's Daily, which is published by the Chinese Communist Party. It is not yet clear how many journalists work in the U.S. for the organizations that were designated on Monday. The U.S. took similar actions against Soviet outlets during the Cold War. That precedent reflects the bitter state of relations between the U.S. and China, which are at odds over the origin and response to the coronavirus, trade, human rights, and other issues. U.S. officials say the designated media outlets should be considered foreign missions under American law because they are substantially owned or effectively controlled by the government of the People's Republic of China and should not be treated like traditional news organizations. These aren't journalists. These are members of the propaganda apparatus in the PRC, Stilwell said in a conference call with reporters. Asked about potential Chinese retaliation, Stilwell noted that American journalists working in China already face tight restrictions on their activities. China had no immediate reaction to the announcement, but the Foreign Ministry accused the administration of harboring a Cold War mentality and ideological prejudice when it applied the same designation to 5 other media organizations earlier this year. At that time, the administration applied the label to the Xinhua News Agency, China Global Television Network, CGTN, China Radio International, the China Daily Distribution Corporation, which distributes the newspaper of the same name, and Haitian Development USA, which distributes the People's Daily newspaper. Then the U.S. administration capped the number of journalists from the 5 allowed to work in the U.S. at 100, down from about 160. At the time, the U.S. cited China's increasingly harsh surveillance, harassment and intimidation of American and other foreign journalists in China. China announced in response that it would revoke the media credentials of all American journalists at the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post.